Official title, we have Melinda. You go by Mel, right?
I do, yes, but Melinda's okay too.
Okay. Maddox, who's the master blender at Old Elk.
Let's say blender apprentice.
What's that?
We'll call him that. Greg's our master of
Oh, okay.
everything, so I'm not quite worthy yet of the master title, but thank
I
you.
love the fact that you just took the title and threw it on the ground. Because that we are people that believe the same thing. It's like so.
That's right. There are a lot of titles being thrown around, but you are actually
bandied
somebody
about.
who's competent, but recognizing that possibly a little bit of nonsense thrown around with a lot of those
Sure.
titles.
Absolutely.
Well, and then the other thing is that forget about the title. The proof is, and of your work is what we're about to taste in the bottles too. So we're very excited about that.
Yes, this is a exciting thing for me too, because it's the first time I get to talk about it. So thank you.
So this is your resume right here.
Yeah, your resume.
The liquid resume.
Well, what's really sort of cool about this, Randall, is that they sort of haven't been able to. This is the first foray into actually having finished whiskey, correct?
A secondary finish, yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
doing something that's, not just out of the straight American oak fresh out.
Yeah.
We're doing the second finish on it, yeah. So this is our sort of our first foray into experimental whiskeys.
I love the fact because I know Greg was probably like, you guys do it. He's one of those hands-off guys that he's like maybe come up with something and is like, okay, you guys figure it out. This is what we should be doing.
Sounds like Greg.
Yeah. So I think listen, I think it's important. I think I love the fact that he makes sure everybody's involved with everything that's going on there too. Because I really believe in that sort of like team effort thing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what comes across about Old Elk.
Definitely. Everybody here has, everybody's kind of involved in different departments of the business. And Greg is super humble, as you know, but also just a great mentor in that way, because all of his knowledge is out there for myself and for others in the company to have access to. But he doesn't force it on you unless you, obviously mess something up or don't take quite the right turn that he wants you to take. But he really does appreciate other people's perspectives, and obviously the cask finish stuff is something that is still sort of experimental in across the country, across the world. Like, people kind of do their thing, but there's not like one way to do it. So Greg really respected that we had to kind of figure it out for ourselves. And
all right, well, so we actually haven't had these yet, so
awesome. We waited to taste them with you.
I love
it. You made a distinction earlier by saying, all your whiskey is completed, but we're talking here today about 4 secondary finish, meaning taking out of the original barrel and then putting into kind of a specialty cask or barrel to add additional twist of flavor or taste. And so these are what we are calling finish whiskeys, but I guess that could be confusing to a lot of consumers because really all whiskey is finished by the time it leaves Old Elk, but this is a secondary cask finish.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Now, we didn't know which way to set these up, so we're going to go by.
Okay.
And we can't really see your bottles, but what's the first one you're doing?
I would like to start with the Armagnac, and then do the Cognac, and then the port and the sherry.
Okay.
So we had the one reverse, but
okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right, so let me give you the Armagnac first then. I love Armagnac, and this is done. So you're using the straight bourbon. This is at 108.5. So you're doing the cask strengths on these.
We are, yes. So this was a blend of 15 92-gallon Armagnac casks.
Ooh.
We filled those with our mash bill, our 51% corn, 34% barley, and our 15% rye, standard flagship that Old Elk's kind of known for. Filled those. They probably went in around between 111 and 115 proof. Depends on, what barrels we were harvesting to put into there. And we have not cut this down. So this is just a blend of all of those 15 barrels.
That's fantastic.
So just so everybody knows which one we're trying first, is the Armagnac cask finish from Old Elk. It's the straight bourbon finished in Armagnac barrels. It's at 108.5. Yes. And like you said, I'll let you age at least 5 years, correct?
Yep, aged at least 5 years. As you know, We've been doing whiskey now since a little before 2015. So we've got some things that are coming up on 6 and 7 years old, but 5 is really where the flagship's at.
Now, is the mash bill going to be the same on all these, or
It
you
is.
just okay?
It is.
So it's
So
a
it's
true
kind of
finish.
What was that?
I like
Yeah.
that.
What's that? I'm sorry.
If you could run those numbers by me again,
Sure. So it's our 51% corn, our 34% barley, and 15% rye. So
okay.
that 34% barley, malted barley, and that 15% corn, 15% rye probably is going to sort of stand out for some people because that's not a very standard mash bill at all. And we do take a lot of pride in the fact that this is our custom mash bill. That high malt barley is what I think really kind of shines through on each of the different expressions that we're going to taste.
Definitely can taste it.
Yeah,
It gives it a richness. That's,
it absolutely does.
Yeah.
I want to get into this slightly a little bit because for some people, this may be their first time hearing about Old Elk or talking about Old Elk. And I think it's important to sort of bring about that Old Elk is really sort of came about in a very strange way. Because if you want to get technical, it's sourced whiskey. But if you want to ask me what it is, you guys basically had custom distilling done for you, contract distilling, because Greg, who's the master distiller anyways, but he actually came up with all these mash bills, and they were done when he was at MGP. And now he's buying all the barrels that he actually distilled as his new position at Old Elk. So it's a
which
very
is in Colorado.
which is in Colorado. But what's different about that is I don't want it lost in the fact that, like, not that there's anything wrong with it, because people do a ton of different things with MGP distillate.
That's great whiskey.
And it's great whiskey. There's no other thing around there. But the fact that Greg actually sort of designed these mash bills and distilled these mash bills at basically another distillery than where he's at now.
Right.
That makes sense. So because somebody came up to me like, oh, there's just it's MGP. Like, no, it's not.
It's a little different.
I would say,
yeah.
But the only exception I would say, which would probably be the 95.5, the 95 rye, 5% malted barley rye mash bill, because let's face it, that's a killer mash bill. You wouldn't really want to change that. Even if you had to, I don't think I'm really changing that. When I come up with another rye, but that would be definitely one that's sort of the king
Not
king
going
of
away.
ryes. Huh?
It's not going away.
Yeah.
The 95.
Yeah, and I kind of like get a little bit annoyed with some of the people who know everything that's going on, but in reality, they're just kind of like talking points about trying to like kind of take people down a notch on their brand. The pedigree is there, the proof is in the glass, right? You can talk all you want about like, well, did this particular bottle come from MGP, and then 5 years from now, is it now coming out of Colorado? You can get into that argument all day long. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't taste good, you're not going to have the argument about it anyway. And this tastes fantastic. It's got a lot of very rich notes. The Old Elk is really, from everybody that I've talked to, has a lot of great respect for the brand. So I hear a lot of noise in the whiskey world, but that noise tends to be people kind of talking out of school, just like trying to like make a name for themselves by like, look at me, look at what I know. And I'm like, yeah, you don't really know it if you're not tasting it.
Well, I think our story, as you pointed out, and you did a really great job of explaining it, it's very different because yes, this was, produced at MGP, but the master, Greg, he came up with this mash bill. It wasn't just, out of a catalog. It wasn't just one of his chosen recipes. He really did, create this for us. And he believes in it so much that he decided to join us as our master distiller. And that's what Old Elk is.
It makes the whole thing fill in.
I love it because when I started to get into whiskey and the beverage hospitality world back in 2013 was kind of when all of this was happening, and I had no idea. But I was, one of those people who listened to a lot of the noise and got very confused about it too at times. Like, wait, is the source? Where is it coming from? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And I think that understanding like transparency is what we're about, and also quality, overall, and the fact that Greg is is responsible for this, directly. For me,
I-
I wouldn't be anywhere else.
At the end of the day, though, all the talk, conjecture, or whatever comes down to two things, in my opinion. Do you like the way this tastes? I do. Do you like the price point that it's at? Because some of the stuff just gets too nuts with the secondary market and the pricing. And I do like the Old Elk price point. And can I continue to get it at that price point and that flavor? And I think these are limited, right? Because you're not.
Yeah, these are a little bit more money because they're cast strength.
Right, but I mean,
they're like,
still
but they're
not-
not like $100. I mean, they're not like, it's not like, but I will tell you the other part of that, Randall, though, is we actually did an Armagnac rye, an Armagnac aged in rye. And what was really, I think was really cool about this one, I mean, that was good on its own and that's what it is. The malt, I think, the corn and malt part of this, give a different flavor profile from the Armagnac that I don't think that we got on that, because you dropped off some of that spicy note. Now some of the more wine flavors are like more of that wine flavor is coming through.
Yeah.
And I really like where this goes. It's very fluid. It's very balanced. I like it a lot.
Awesome. Thank you.
Now, how many of you set aside for yourself?
Uh,
Is there at least 2 barrels of that?
yeah,
in your own personal collection?
no. We'll
That's the
start
problem with
talking about
Armagnac
that.
barrels. They're very big.
Yeah.
The CEO recently was like, "How many barrels do we have? I want to make sure we're tracking all this."
Yeah.
right.
No,
You're
that is a
I've
good
gotta
question
keep
to
doing
know.
research. Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's 2 missing. There are about 6,000 bottles that'll be released of the Armagnac finish, and then our plan is to go ahead and keep the experiment rolling and see what happens. We filled them a second time, and we'll be doing sensory tasting throughout the next 6 to 8 months. And when it's ready, I have faith that it's going to be delicious. We're going to probably release as a single barrel program. So.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
So this
Yeah.
was a large batch that you
Mhm.
kind of combined.
15 barrels.
And
Yep.
now what will be going out is those same barrels, but now as a single barrel expression.
Does somebody have to
Yes.
buy the whole Armagnac barrel, which is quite big?
Yeah, I mean they're 92 gallons, so
Yeah, that's like a double barrel.
it is. That's almost double.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So let's try the other ack that's in there. So we got cognac. For you.
Yeah. Now, are these at the same price point across, or does it vary? Because I know that the casks can be a varying cost, right?
No, these are all the same.
They're the same.
Well, no, I'm just saying that to make this Armagnac is generally one of the more expensive casks to get.
No, there's definitely some variance there. But releasing, one of the things about releasing all of them at once is that we're allowed to sort of absorb that cost across the.
Put it across the board as
Exactly.
a sort of a set. All right, so this one is at 109.7. This is the cognac finish. Again, straight, same mash bill.
Same mash bill.
Same ages. We're looking at
Same
about
ages.
5 years, correct?
Yep.
All right, at least 5 years old.
We're talking 70-gallon barrel size though this time with the cognac, so
Right.
a little smaller.
Yeah.
More barrels, or did you reduce?
We did 20. Yeah.
Yeah. That is delicious too.
Now, see, I think that in this one, the spirit shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think with the Armagnac, that because Armagnac has that. Not really. We didn't get into like Rancio or Grima's Attic or any of that flavors, but it has sort of that more of that winey sort of flavor to it, which I think went really well. This is definitely a little bit more spirit forward, and you're tasting like cognac.
Yeah,
I can taste cognac in this without a doubt.
Well, you get that sweetness. You get a little bit of the what I always associate almost like a berry note to it. But
Red berry.
I would say that the Armagnac, to those who don't know Armagnac, I would steer them towards the cognac.
Okay.
But if you like a little bit funkier, and Ryan and I do like a little bit more of an out of bounds taste, I'm loving the Armagnac. So,
I mean, I think the Armagnac for me is more complex in some
Yes.
ways.
Right.
So, I like it for that reason.
But I think in this one you get. What do you find, Mel? I find this one has more of that. You can tell it's cognac. I mean, it's more, it runs to the more spirit side. Not hot, but
No.
there's something else there. You can tell it's cognac, and you tell that there's something else going on.
Yeah, I think you get that sort of right out of the gate, the first sip, the first, smell of it. But I agree with you that the mash bill comes through nicely on this, and I think
Yeah.
I get like a little bit of smokiness, which I attribute to the malted barley. And then it kind of gets like really big in the middle and then finishes really smooth. And that's what a good cognac does for me too. So I also get like a little chocolate at the finish, like as it kind of sits for a minute.
Yeah, a little mocha almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. Oh, geez, now you're gonna you're making this all so difficult, Mel. I'm not really.
You don't
Well-
have to choose. There are.
Well, now I don't, because they sent me a sample of each one. Now I don't.
Let me ask, is this going to go through the same single barrel treatment that the Armagnac went through?
It will, yes. Yep, that is the plan. This is our first time doing this, and obviously, what we got out of the barrels the first time. So out of these Armagnac, cognac, and second finished barrels was good. So we expect that the second fill is going to be just as good. It's a matter of how long and how much we can.
Now, how did you get these barrels? We talked about they were together,
Sure.
They were wet, they were dry. You had what was
Yep,
the
they were still
condition?
wet. They were still wet. We got these from a local purveyor of fine European wood. I can't say exactly who, but
Yeah,
they did source them
we
for
get
us.
that.
Yeah.
We've learned that a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm sure.
By the way, we will find out though.
Yeah, it's not too hard to find. But I do think it's an interesting thing to talk about it being wet wood in the second finish category, because there are some people who argue that the flavor that we're picking up in the whiskey after you finish it is just the juice that was left over in the barrel. And then there are other people who argue that it's the barrel that does all the flavoring. And I'm of that second, that mindset. And I think, generally everybody at Old Elk is too. It's, if we were talking about a little port getting mixed with the whiskey and that's where the flavor comes from, then it would be immediate. We wouldn't have to do the aging process.
How long are you keeping them in there for the finishing?
We did these ones 6 months.
6 months, okay.
Yeah,
On
but the second finish will go longer.
The Armagnac probably a little bit longer.
The Armagnac was the last one that we harvested. Yeah.
So Randall and I have talked about this several different times over the years and sort of delved into this. So we've actually, Dr. Don Livermore is the one who actually put us on to why, because we had questions of why certain things happen. And his sort of thing on that with finishing barrels or anything like that, about 3 months, because, and you're only going to get half of what's in there ends up in the whiskey. So just using numbers is like,
Sure.
If it's 100 ppms, parts per million in the barrel, when you take this out, you'll have 50 ppms of what's in the barrel, from the barrel to the whiskey. But you still have part of the aging process when you go out to like 6 months.
Absolutely.
There's aging going on also. So it's just not, it's when you start putting it out there, if you just want the flavor, you can go 2-3 months and you're going to get it. Because you're extracting whatever you're going to extract, you're going to get that. You're going to get half of it. So when you go in the second time, you're going to get half of that 50 then.
Exactly.
Now it's 25.
Yep.
So you're going to get that. But when you leave it in there longer, which I like, because I think it not only, we know you're not going to get any more of that Armagnac or cognac flavor, but you are getting time and it's becoming more integrated. So, patience sometimes.
This is something that we've seen. I would just be asking, my question would be, you have it in the cognac or the Armagnac cask. Are there points where you're tasting it and you're like, I don't think this is going to work because this is what I found. And then all of a sudden one day you go back and you're like, oh, holy cow, it's completely turned the corner and really has developed into something that we were hoping it would.
Yeah. And it's, go ahead. Sorry.
It's not just weaker in the beginning, it literally has a very different taste. And then suddenly it starts to change or evolve into something completely different than it was a week or a month before.
Did you find that with these?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's a thing, because you don't want to have somebody who's never gone through the process try it, or at least not without giving them some of that background like you just did, because otherwise they taste it and they're like, this is terrible. What are we going to do? This is bad. It's not going to work. And you're like, hold on. We're going to try this again. Exactly. And the really cool thing too is like as you start to see it coming to its final kind of fruition where you want to harvest it, that process sort of speeds up where you can kind of, you're like, okay, I'm getting 4 or 5 of like these nuances that I want, but it's still not quite like it doesn't feel or taste quite finished or as sophisticated, as we want. And then when we got there, it was like, oh my gosh, it's there, guys. We got to harvest these.
Everybody
now.
runs around the thing. Bottle it now, with their hands in the air. No,
That was
it's
me.
not.
And they're like,
Yeah.
we have all these things to work out. I'm like, nope. It's
Nope,
gotta come
bottle
out
it now.
now.
We'll figure those out later.
Now, my question would be that you have multiple casks and they're all going to kind of be a little bit different, but they all seem to pop at one time, or you were pulling out half of them a couple weeks before the other half, or how does that work when you're harvesting?
No, you do. I mean, you do a sample set. So
Okay.
we took a sample of each sort of category and then blended those together. And that's what we would do kind of throughout the process. And then we'd also go in and just individually taste. And when you got to a point where, let's say, a fraction like 1% of the barrels, 1 to 3% of the barrels is still tasting like it's not quite where you want it, but the rest are, that's where we decided to pull them.
Because in averaging that flavor in the batch,
Mm-hmm.
it'll pull those kind of lagging notes back to where you want it
Yeah,
by
and
the strength of the other barrels. Yeah.
I mean, not even so much lagging notes. It's just that there's like a magic moment, I guess, where you do taste a barrel where you're like, this is beautiful, it's good, it shouldn't go
Right.
any further. But you never know exactly if you're going to reach that with a barrel,
Now here's the other question. Did you?
Oh, wait.
Okay, go ahead. Follow up. Go ahead.
No, I want to hear the end of that.
You never know. You never know if you're going to reach that final. You never know if each barrel is going to get there.
Right.
So I think when you get to the point where you have that small fraction, you can, and it's still good. It just isn't. It isn't like, oh my gosh, this is like the nectar of the gods barrel.
Right.
Like this is amazing. It's good, but you're not like next to the other 20 barrels. You're like, wait a minute, it's going to be fine though. And I think you're getting different flavors pulled out at different times. So, we didn't dump anything that wasn't ready. We just
Right.
dumped some that maybe weren't like, oh my gosh, that's like,
Well,
can I
here's
send
the
this to
flip
God
side.
and
Here's the
have him
flip side
try
of
it.
that coin, though. Here's that flip side of the coin. When you're trying these and you
Mhm.
hit like the OMG barrel,
Yeah.
and now you're like, okay, now we have a decision to make. Are we barreling this one? Are we bottling this one separately? Or is it gonna make the rest of them so much better that we need to keep it in there? Because the temptation a lot of times is like,
Sure.
I want to keep that one separate because it's just, I'm not going to get another barrel like that. That's just
No, I mean,
unbelievable.
for us, it was more like, well, this is what everything else has to
You're trying you
come
set the
close
level.
to. Like, this is the bar, this is the baseline. So it can only fall within a certain range of that baseline. I think with our second fill, we'll run into that more sort of emotional, spiritual dilemma
Right.
of like, wait, this barrel's really, really good. This barrel's good. This barrel's like almost really, really good. Do we
Right.
want to do a small blend? Do we want to do a single barrel? That kind of thing. And that's the fun with single barrels is they do all have their own characters. So one that might be my baby might not be somebody else's baby.
That's true. It's always up to individual. All right. What's the next one?
Well, let's not pay too much attention to one child
Yes.
at the expense of the others. We're moving on to, I believe, the pork cast finish.
The
Please
pork
tell
cast
us if
finish.
we're not correct. Now, you mentioned Nectar of the Gods.
Yes.
You guys are located in Fort Collins, Colorado. Is that near Garden of the Gods?
Near what?
Garden of the Gods.
Garden of the Gods.
The monument, it's like a park. It's
Oh, I didn't
has
know
a lot
that.
of stone formations. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think it may be farther
I feel
south than
like
that.
such a tourist. I don't know. I think so.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, I moved here 2.5 years ago to work with Old Elk from Boston.
They don't
actually.
let her out of the distillery. Right? You don't seem to understand that.
Well, it's kind of true. I mean, we did have a year of a pandemic where I pretty much wasn't
Right.
allowed to
Right.
go
That's
anywhere
right.
but here. So yeah, but I have heard of the Garden of the Gods, and I think it is close. Yeah.
So what's the
So this one.
where did you come from exactly?
Maine and Boston.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
So our
stomping grounds
fans
up there.
that listen from kind of our neck of the woods, you have a
Yes.
connection to that. So
Oh yeah, definitely have visited your store once or twice. in the
No.
past.
Oh, that's good. All right, this one
Well,
is
you can count this as the third time.
this is 108.1, and again, minimum of 5 years. You can see the color on this one. Jeez. The color variation on this one is a lot darker. I think because of that, obviously the port, but you can smell it on the nose.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is that even though you're using casks that you might have associated with Scotch or with bourbon or other things, it really is taken in a completely different direction because the mash bill is so unique and the flavor is
Yeah.
already starting. So you're definitely getting that port richness, that kind of rounder note that I call like a kind of like an aged sweetness.
Well, that's why
And now it's been added to your Old Elk special sauce that.
yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, I've had several port finished bourbons. This has definitely a different flavor profile than almost every single one of them that I've had. In a good way.
I was gonna say, I hope that's in a good way.
Yes, it's in a good way.
No,
But
this
it is that there's a roundness to it.
Mhm.
There's a richness to it. And there's more of a, I want to get like almost more of a sweetness to it also.
Yeah.
What are you getting?
I'm getting a little bit of almost like a tobacco leaf
Yeah.
or like a leather kind of note in a good way. This is delicious. But I think it's that combination of that malt and that rye.
And I'm getting a red berry, like maybe
Yeah.
a stone, almost cherry.
Yeah, I definitely get a lot of the cherry. I also get just like a spiced oak kind of right on the front when I
little wood,
when I go in.
like a wood spice.
yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, which is weird because we're not, with such little rye in this, we're not really expecting that sort of spiciness.
Mhm.
And it sort of lingers a little bit at the end on your tongue. There's a little bit of spiciness at the end of this one, which is, I didn't expect to
Yeah.
sort of taste that. And I do. And it's, again, not in a bad way. It's just, it's something, it's surprising. I guess that's more my.
And more balanced. I think you get with a lot of the port finished bourbons, you get like a just
One note.
flowing sweetness and.
Yeah, one note.
But this moves through some different layers of flavor.
Right. I know we've had a lot of people have been calling us, just so you know, Mel, is a lot of people have been calling us or asking us about the finish, the Old Elk finishes,
Mhm.
and we haven't had them yet. This is our first taste
Oh,
of them,
cool.
too. So
That's awesome.
our first taste is with you. I actually opened these bottles up a little bit earlier before the show today.
Let it
Just
kind of breathe.
let it breathe out any volatile notes that were in there to be gone. And I wanted to make sure that our first taste was actually with you. So
Well, I feel honored. Thank you.
I don't know if that's, I don't know if there's anything to be honored about. You're spending a half an hour with these two idiots. I don't know. That's your saving grace is
No, I love
it's
it.
not live, but other than that,
Now, have you had to deal with any of the neck pour nonsense? Because
Have
you
you heard
created
that?
a bottle that cannot have a neck pour.
I love it.
The neck pour nonsense.
Have you ever heard this? Have you heard this?
No, please enlighten me.
Oh, I don't know if you really want to be enlightened. This is a rabbit hole. I don't know you want to go down.
Idiotic.
Neck
But there's a
pour.
whole kind of subculture in the whiskey hipster, the hipster kind of movement that talks about how liquid that's trapped in the neck has a different flavor or quality.
I'm just
And
not
so
even.
some people try and set it to the side. Some people say that it's better, worse.
Well,
And we're like, it's a non-issue, like just turn your bottle upside down.
Yeah,
well,
that is them trying to overcomplicate and
Yes.
bring
It's a
something
very simple
new to the
process,
table that is just about like, no,
Mel, what it started is exactly what I just told you. What it started was that, it is alcohol. You're talking about stuff. I didn't look at the EBP on this one, or the proof. You're studying stuff that's over 100 proof, right? It's
Yes.
sitting there. Alcohol gives off fumes. It can get trapped in that space. And I think this is the way it started off is you open the bottle up and pour some out because there is some like volatile, there can be some volatility at the front and just trying to get rid